Welcome to Shine Your Light Conversations, where we meet ordinary women being extraordinary. These are women who are courageous in living their truth, and in shining their light, they empower themselves and inspire others. I'm your host, Kate Watkinson. Thank you for joining us. And today I have a lovely, lovely guest that I'm very excited to be with and share in a conversation with. And we have the incredible Jenny Mitchell, who is an artist, originally from the deep south of Aotearoa, who creates award-winning music, and her songs are imbued with wisdom and wit. So welcome, Jenny.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Now, I have a little story to share that I very first met Jenny a few years ago when we were selling our wares at a market, and I remember just taking a glance at this young woman thinking, oh, there's something about her. She's got a light and she's going to go places. And I really just felt, really excited about the potential I could see in you. And then when I met you and you were so humble and grounded, I thought this is really wonderful to see somebody who's obviously got such talent, but who has also got their feet on the ground and that humility that it's the making of a great artist right here.
Oh, thank you. I remember that day as well, and I was so happy because it was quite a long day, and once we started chatting we had some great conversations, and it was the saving grace of that experience, I think.
yeah, probably quite right. So if I asked you to describe yourself in limited words, how would you do that?
I would say that I am first and foremost a songwriter. That's what I like to, or how I feel that I am. And then as a result of that, I'm also a recording artist and a performer. And I would say that I am someone who is a good friend and who very much values family. And I'm hoping to be able to mix all of those things together and create a good life out of that.
I love it. And that's another aspect that I've been witness to with you, Jenny, along the way, seeing how close you are with your family and how you bring them into your gigs, and they've obviously played a big part in not only your personal life but in your music life. So is there anything you'd like to share about that, about the influence of family?
Sure, yeah. So my dad is a singer and a musician, and so he started my love of music and country music in particular. And we sort of grew up singing with him. My sisters and I've got twin sisters who are 17, almost 18. And we all sort of, always had music in the house, and we used to sing at different things around Southland and our hometown of Gore. And as I sort of grew up and left home and then started touring a lot on my own, we sort of lost that connection a little bit. When I'd come back to Gore, we would always play together, but wasn't really until the pandemic happened that I was a lot more in one place than I had been for a few years. And so my sisters and I started singing a lot more together and started writing a little bit together, and ended up doing a tour together, which was awesome. And Dad came along as well, and it was super fun. And it really is, it's quite magical watching them, because in my head they're always going to be like little babies. And so I had this chance to take them all around New Zealand and show them places I'd seen. I've driven through a number of times on tours, but for them it was this first time magical thing of seeing like Golden Bay, and even their first time at a folk festival and things like that. So I feel like that's really been a highlight of my musical experience, has been having them there. And yes, they're just good bandmates, because we have to, at the end of the day, get along. So that helps too.
That's cool. It's like there's something about like that, the beginner's mind, or the childlike sense of wonder with new opportunities. So you sort of felt that you were able to have that experience with your sisters. It's really nice. That's cool. Yeah.
No, it's definitely made it a lot more fun.
Yeah, that's lovely. And for you, what is it that you actually feel like? What's the calling in you to create music?
I've thought about this question a lot more in the last 2 years than I probably ever have. like I say, Dad sort of started the music thing for us, and I can't actually remember a time where I wasn't on stage. My first on stage appearance was when I was 4 years old, so I just don't actually know a me without that, I guess. But it is interesting because it's a hard slog making music, and until very recently I have just been independent, and so I haven't had the support of a label or anything like that. So there's definitely times where I don't know, finish a hard gig or get home after a tour and I'm just exhausted, and I'm often on those tours where I'm on my own. I'm the sound engineer and the door lady and the merch seller and the musician, and so that definitely takes a toll. And sometimes when you finish something like that, you get home and ask yourself what on earth you're kind of doing it for. But for me, the writing, I think, is something that I would always do, whether I was a performing artist or not. I think I would always write. But when I can get on stage and actually connect with people and make them feel something, or remind them of somebody through a song or through a story, that is the most golden part of my life. And it doesn't matter how tired I am or how far I've had to drive, if I can feel like I've had a connection with somebody or a group of people, then I just forget about all the other stuff, and and I want to do it forever.
It's so fantastic, and I resonate with that in a couple of senses too, that sometimes I think with the work I do that it, these are just in the moments of ebbs and flows, and I may have a bit of a low day where I think I should just get a job, like as in a mainstream job. And then I have these moments of, what does my soul want? And my soul is like, every part of me, every single inch of me loves the work I do and knows that it's important and sacred. And then it's that wee message, keep going, because it's important, and it's who you are. Yeah. So yeah, and your music is, like you say, when you have that connection with people and the potency of the words, that you're writing, how that you just never know how something that you share could change someone's life. It's medicine for many people. Yeah,
and medicine for me too, I think, especially in the past couple of years when I just now realize that before pandemic I had an abundance of gigs and opportunities to connect with people and so on. And now when I do a gig, it's often there's months in between, and it's just, I think I maybe did take it for granted for a while, because it becomes part of a bit of a cycle, I guess. Like it's part of your job as a musician is to play gigs. And I still, loved every single gig, but now when I do one, it's much more important to me to, like talk to people afterwards, because the other, I don't know, 80 to 90% of the time of being a musician is sitting at home, and if you're not writing, usually it's like doing admin on your computer, which isn't quite the, mystical, lovely image that people, I guess, like to have of what being a musician is. But I think that can be bad for my brain if I'm doing it too much and am not having that experience of playing a song to a person, because that's the point, is to share music, I think. And so I have found a lot in the last couple of years that I've realized how important that is. And if you don't have a gig amongst many hours of looking at a screen, then you can not feel very good quite quickly. So I think I'm just looking forward to having gigs more frequently and hopefully less time typing.
Yeah, and something you said then really connected, Jenny, about, I think when you're on the path of living your truth, it is medicine for yourself and for others. It's not like in doing something that deeply resonates with you that you're not going to have an impact. Like it's bigger when you're really aligned. You're nourishing yourself and others, and that's so powerful. And that's exactly what this whole conversation is about, celebrating that and hopefully inspiring more women to really come into living their truth. And you've acknowledged that it's not always easy, but it feels right and it feels true. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a perfect way of summarizing it, that there definitely are, like there is in any job. I think that's the thing as well, that you have to remember that it's not just, creatives that have parts of their job that they don't like. But I think what makes it challenging is perhaps the quite solitary aspect, which I'm sure you understand as well, that sometimes you're not connected to other people having a similar experience. And so it can feel that it's the hardest thing in the world, but then you get to do what you're, really there to do and connect with people. And then, like I say, it doesn't matter anymore. So yeah, I think that's very true, that it's hard, but even when it is at the hardest point, it still feels like that I'm doing the right thing.
Yeah, fantastic. So I have this quote from Khalil Gibran. Music is the language of the spirit. It opens the secrets of life.
Yeah, I love that.
Is there anything more you'd add to that?
I think I love that quote, and I think it's very true. And it just makes me think about, songwriters that I love. And I think songs are kind of such a special way of, I learn things about myself when I listen to songs that I love, but also connecting with other people. There's, songs that are very multi-generational, I guess, and like songs that my dad really loves that makes me realize, or I think I realize this now, but when I was younger, you just see your dad as your dad, but it might be like a heartbreak song or something like that. And you realize like, oh, he's actually a human, with a life other than what I know. And same with mum, actually. So yeah, I think, just when you said about the secrets, I feel that definitely music is kind of a bit of a sneak peek maybe into people's lives that we don't know.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I totally get what you're saying about your parents. I've definitely had that experience when I often used to consider, well, they can just like handle everything because they're adults, and then you become an adult yourself and you think, actually, the only way you learn to handle anything is through life experience, but it's funny how we have these ideas of people and roles and cool. So you have created a new song, Trouble Finds a Girl, and I know that you touched a little on, you took to the road with your sisters who were younger than you, and there was a lot of magic in that. And I also know that you have you also were aware about protecting them and perhaps a sort of more darker side of the industry. Would you be willing to talk to that, Jenny?
Of course. So I took the girls on this tour of New Zealand, and we also, not long before that, went over to Australia for their first time in Australia. And I have been touring on my own since I was like 16, I guess. Mum and dad have been there kind of when they can, but they're pretty much as soon as I got a license, I was able to get in my car and go to gigs and things. And there's so much, I guess, you're exposed when you're in gigs in your place of work. It's nothing like an office, it's not a well-lit office with people around, and you are really vulnerable. And I never really thought about it too much, I think, when I was at that age. I don't actually remember ever feeling really scared or really unsafe, but I was definitely really uncomfortable, and there was definitely a lot of things said and commented on with me in the room about me that are just totally inappropriate and made me feel really uncomfortable. But at that stage, I didn't really recognize it as an issue, and I didn't know how to call people out, or I didn't know, how to respond at all. So it's quite an interesting process for me watching them, because I was seeing similar things happen and seeing them respond very much the same as I did, and not really knowing what to do. And all of a sudden, when you can see those situations where young girls are feeling, and not just young girls, just women in general, are feeling uncomfortable because they are often in a room of people who are much older than them and much more experienced, and who get a bit, aware of that, I guess. It's awful watching that, and then realizing, how many times I had felt uncomfortable as a young person. And so I had this whole experience of like feeling really sad for younger me and wishing that younger me didn't have to do that. And then thinking, why am I even bringing the twins into this industry at all? Like I felt quite guilty. I was like, what's wrong with me? I know that these things happen. I know that they're going to feel uncomfortable. And I felt responsible that I hadn't taught them anything. I was like, I haven't taught them how to, tell someone to stop doing that, or taught them that they're allowed to have boundaries and things like that. And so it was quite an emotional experience. And they, I think, were quite blissfully unaware of it while it was happening. Like if you ask them about the tour, they just say, oh, we had so much fun and we were at the beach and all these things. But I just became really aware that I didn't want them to be uncomfortable. And so we had lots of cool conversations as we were driving around, and just so that they knew that they don't have to feel like that, and that I'm always, like just 2 steps away in the room, and that they can tell me that they want to leave or anything like that. And I guess I hope that I am to them what maybe I could have done with when I was that age and I was navigating that world. So anyway, that's sort of the long-winded story of how I started writing this idea of Trouble Finds a Girl, which is calling out sexual misconduct in the industry, but also is, I hope, quite an empowering song. It's not all kind of doom and gloom. It's sort of about celebrating how we can support each other. And I tried to write it a couple of times and I couldn't quite get it right. And then I had the opportunity to write with a group of writers that included Tammy Nielsen, who is my absolute idol and favorite artist ever. And I love her so much. And she has been a real sort of guiding person for me, and someone who's protected me and educated me and inspired me since I was 10 years old when I saw her for the first time. So it felt like a real full circle moment to sit down with her and say, because she's had all those experiences and more. She's also been performing since she was really young and touring on her own for a long time. And so we all have the same experience. Unfortunately, there's a lot of crossover. And so I told her about the twins, who she's known since they were 5. And so we wrote this song, and it sort of became a lot more than just about Megan and Nicola. But it's always sort of about Megan and Nicola to me. So yeah, I'm pretty proud of that song.
Yeah, and good on you for having the courage to stand up. I mean, it's not an easy subject, and it requires a bit of a deep dive. And like you say, you went on your own journey with that. And the other thing is too, like, also to, like, you acknowledge then it's not about going into all doom and gloom, but actually you're really talking about women standing up together, aren't you? Like actually like no one's alone in this, like really actually let's come together and support each other. And yeah,
yes,
that to me is a great gift that women can really, rather than, I mean, in a much more patriarchal sense, we've probably almost been pitted against each other, whereas that doesn't serve anybody, to actually collaborate and to look out for each other. There's so much gold in that, and yeah, that's really empowering.
Yeah, and I think I wouldn't have been able to write that song without Tammy's support, and that, like, she really has been someone who, I guess, as a songwriter, as you'll know, you've been to my shows, a lot of my songs are, I'd say they're emotional, and I don't think they're not important, but they've often been inspired by good things in my life, like my family and travel and things like that. So when I had this kind of inspiration to write about this, and I wanted to talk about it at shows, I was quite nervous, because I was thinking, oh my goodness, I don't know how people in my hometown are gonna feel when I start talking about this issue, because it's uncomfortable and it makes people uncomfortable. And it's not because necessarily they are part of the problem or have done anything wrong, but sometimes they are victims of that kind of mistreatment, and they don't know how to respond to it. And if you come to a Jenny Mitchell show, you might not have in the past expected to be hearing about that kind of thing. And so I had this bit of an identity crisis about, oh, I don't know, I can't do that. And then Tammy and I wrote it, and it just felt like the most me thing that I'd ever created. And she then performed it with me in Gore at a show months ago now, 6 months ago now. And we played it together, and there was all these people I could see in the St. James Theatre that, have watched me sing since I was a teeny tiny human, and they are sort of the people that I was a bit worried about how they would respond and what they would do. And I think I would have been terrified to do it if Tammy hadn't have been there, but Tammy was there and my sisters were on my right, and it was just like, I'll never forget that moment ever. And it was a big moment for me, realizing I can be like this idea of, Jenny Mitchell who writes little folk songs, but I can also write songs about things that are very important to me and that people who are close to me would know that I talk about all the time, and that I'm so passionate about being part of the conversation, but I've never quite had the guts to kind of put that on a stage and be ready for people to criticize it, I guess, or feel differently about it, maybe to how they would feel about me singing a song about mum and dad. And so it's been quite a journey playing that song, and lots of really interesting conversations after the shows with people, particularly with women, but also I think with dads thinking about their daughters or their wives and stuff like that. So I just feel sort of like a piece of the puzzle almost. I just feel really lucky to be part of those conversations, and I just hope that it does something positive.
Yeah. And so you made a comment then, the most me I've ever felt. So, even though obviously that is challenging, and like you said, you kind of went into new territory, but I feel like your audience and those people that love your work, Jenny, would like, what they will feel is that realness that you just said, that will come through, and that's so powerful. And that's kind of a sign of a maturing artist or creative, isn't it, that you're willing to take a slight pivot and dive a bit deeper, or create a little, and in some ways I feel like as a listener, it's also, I actually appreciate that. Like I like that there's this sort of a general thread that threads through, but every now and then to be a little bit surprised, or like, oh, as somebody that listens to your work, I actually appreciate that, and the sense of richness that comes from that deep dive. Yeah,
that's good. I hope that's how people feel, because I feel really inspired by singing that song, and so I probably will for a long time. So I hope that other audience members feel like that too.
What are you most looking forward about the future with your work, with your creating?
I'm really excited at the moment about, I have a new album coming out in July, and that it's the thing in my life that I think I have worked the most on. There's probably a more eloquent way of saying that, but I feel really connected to it, because I've had 2.5 years of a pandemic that have allowed me to really work out what sounds that I want to put on this new work, and the stories as well that I want to put out into the world, which includes Trouble Finds a Girl and a number of other stories. And so I feel really, really excited about putting that out, because I think I'll always be an album artist, and I look forward to the many more albums that I create. But to me, it's kind of all about making that package, that whole collection of songs. And I'm really excited to hopefully be entering a phase of the pandemic where we can tour more internationally and also locally. I've had a lot of plans that I've really been looking forward to that have been cancelled, and that's been really disheartening, like it has been for everybody. So I'm just looking forward to a future that is got more music in it, I guess, or more live music in it. And I live with my lovely boyfriend at the moment, and so I'm feeling really happy about that. And in some ways it's been really nice not being on the road so much, because I've had lots of time with friends and family that I maybe wouldn't have otherwise. So I'm hoping that my future is going to look like a really nice balance of that, where I can enjoy both things and try not to get burnt out, because I think that's happened to me a couple of times in my life. And as I'm sure you know, when you're on your own, you are your own boss, it can be hard to avoid that sometimes. So yeah, I'm just really looking forward to making music and traveling, but doing it in a way that that I also feel like I've got friends and family and the people that I love around me.
Yeah, fantastic. I know that probably a couple of years ago when you were touring more, that, you know, and there's that whole energy of being on the road and packing up and going from here, there and there, that you were doing some things to take care of yourself and just make sure you kept grounded and that sense of flow happening for you. So what is it that you do to, you know, bring yourself home and to calm yourself and to have that sense of groundedness and well-being?
I still am a work in progress on having you can never really have a perfect schedule, but I realized that you actually have to make time within a touring schedule to look after yourself. And a big thing for me is food, like what food I'm eating, because you can only have so many BP toasties before you don't feel very good. And so for a lot of musicians, I feel like that is the first thing to go. Like, you might be really focusing on getting sleep, because that's something that also kind of goes by the wayside. But, you know, if you're sleeping, then you might not have time to prepare food and stuff like that. So I'd say that's actually a big focus for me. I often take a chili bin with like baking and things like that, and food that I can quickly access that is delicious, that I'm like excited about eating, for one, but also that isn't something that I just have to quickly grab that will make me feel awful later. So that's probably number one. And then I realized that I was driving through New Zealand and Australia, but particularly in the last couple of years in New Zealand, that I was driving through these places that were so beautiful, and, you know, like beautiful mountains and beautiful walks everywhere along the road that I was driving, but maybe wasn't scheduling time in to do that. So I really try to, especially on long driving days, if I'm on my own, really try and make time to get out into nature. And when the twins and I did our tour, we did yoga pretty much every morning. Sometimes they wanted to sleep in a little bit more, and I think it's just having a balance of when you want to sleep in, you need to sleep in, and you probably haven't had enough sleep for a few days. So I think it's always give and take of learning that. But for me, probably because I'm always driving, I find even like a short, even if it's just like a stretch rather than a full, you know, yoga session, I find just like my neck and my shoulders and everything do pay the price of driving around and then loading in heavy gear and stuff. So walking and yoga and eating yummy food, if I can do that in a day, then I feel pretty fantastic.
Oh, that sounds good. I totally get that. Yeah, good food is important to me, and being in nature, yes, so much. It will always the thing with nature is that it's simultaneously enlivening and calming, you know, so you have this sense of aliveness and an alertness, but there's also that beautiful sense of everything's okay. And even just in terms of, you know, the yoga, you're so right. I mean, the actual science says that we only need to do 7 minutes of yoga to be in the yogic consciousness of say being in our parasympathetic nervous system. So literally you're better to just do a very small session regularly than maybe just once a month thinking I'll go hard out and do a 2-hour session. So it's really good to just catch small moments when you can, and just do it like you say, like if you're intuitively feeling like you want to do one movement, then do it. And
and I find when, like you're saying about the 7 minutes, when I am touring, and if it is a big day of travel and packing in gear and packing out gear or whatever, it can be the only 7 minutes or the only 10 minutes or whatever where I'm not thinking like you are, I am all the time thinking about you know, like, have we got enough petrol? What time sound check? Are we going to be late? How many Ks is there left to go? Have we got the microphone? Did we forget something? And have we got cash float ready? You know, there's so many little details. And so often, like, I love driving. I used to find driving when I was touring, probably before I was so focused on details, I used to find that quite therapeutic, like just driving through beautiful scenery and stuff made me feel awesome and calm. But often now I'm using that time to think about all those things that need to happen in the next few hours before the gig starts, so that I can have that hour or 2 hours of the gig being what it should be, which is, you know, connecting and not worrying about where things are or what's happening. But yeah, often I found when we did the Grain Store tour with my sisters that it was literally the time in the morning was the only time where we weren't thinking about what was happening next. So I think it's pretty essential, probably in any day. It's a good thing to do, but particularly in those, I guess, high stress times. It's funny, you want to talk about touring, it sounds like it's really stressful. It's also my favorite thing in the world, but there is just a lot going on. So it's good to take a moment and have a stretch.
And you know, that whole taking time does create time. So by that I mean that, you know, even if you only took those few minutes in the morning, it creates a different consciousness and it sets you up for a much more positive day, and things will actually flow on to be a bit more efficient or a bit more graceful or a sense of ease through the day. So sometimes that whole, you know, for some people that say I don't have time, for some kind of wellbeing practice, is actually everybody does have time. It's about prioritizing, and really making the time will give you more time as well. So it's kind of just changing our space on how we consider that, really. I sometimes say to people, if a shower wasn't a normal part of our day, we probably would say we didn't have time for that either, you know.
That's so true. Yes.
Like would be, I don't have time, actually. Can't shower. Whereas it's familiar and we do it because we know it feels good, you know. And I think once you do have some sort of well-being routine, once you've gone through the sort of initial challenge of getting yourself going with it, when you start to really feel the benefits, and for me it's more like the odd day when it doesn't happen, I feel this little slight sense of being off, then that's what really keeps me coming back. So I'm like, it feels good, you know, my day flows so much better, I feel better. Is there any other stories you'd like to share about your music or the album that's coming out?
I have got a song that will be out by the time this goes into the world, but I'm releasing a song that is called Lucy, which I'm quite excited about, which I may have played, I think, at a show that you've been at. And I've released 2 singles so far from this new album, both of which are quite dark and serious, I guess. And one is Trouble Finds a Girl, and the other is called Somehow, which is about mental health and watching people you love struggle with mental health. So I sort of feel like Lucy is a bit of a breath of fresh air, I guess. And it's a song that is about gratitude and is about, I am guilty of comparing myself to others a lot, like most people are, and I am working on that, as you know, everybody is sort of trying to do that least, but it sometimes is a bit tricky. And so I'm really excited about sharing this song, because it's actually inspired by Lucille Ball, who is was a wonderful and very famous actress in a show called I Love Lucy. So that's where the title comes from. And she, in the TV show, wanted to be some kind of performer or singer at different phases of the series, and sort of then decided that that wasn't her role. And she sort of is a stereotypical kind of 50s housewife sort of character. And she has these dreams, but then comes back to the fact that no, that's not for her and that's not her life. And so I was studying that show at university, and I just thought it was kind of interesting, because I was sort of the opposite, I suppose. But in saying that, the opposite and that I was also looking at her lovely house in this series and thinking that that looked quite nice, and that I wasn't, and I'm still not close to buying my own house and things like that. So I just started thinking about how the things that she wanted is what I had, and then the things that she had feel very like unattainable for me at the moment, and so I'm probably a bit jealous of that stuff. And so that's where this song came from, and it just makes me feel really good when I listen to it. And it's got some sort of Celtic, I guess, sounding viola on it, which I just love, and I haven't really explored so much in my previous releases. So I'm really excited to kind of have that thread coming out into the world. And I'm excited about that song and all the other songs that are coming out. But I'd love your listeners to maybe check that one out, because it makes me feel good, so I hope it might make them feel good too.
I've had a sneaky peek, and I am really excited about that song too. It's cool.
Oh, thanks.
And I do, it's good to acknowledge that we all have this little perhaps a slight grass is greener, a little imposter syndrome that comes about, but really, when we're grateful for what we have, I don't say that sort of cliche, but really being grateful for what we have is what, and even just celebrating those moments, because we there's so many things we can celebrate that we kind of just move on to another thing. It's like, hey, I just made an album that's worth celebrating. And how we taking care of our well-being and being grateful and celebrating our success, so that we can still look and respect other people, but also not with those lenses of like their life is somehow better than mine.
Yes.
Yeah. I think I've definitely, over time been very aware that we all, no matter how famous or how rich or how whatever, are all going to experience pain. We're all going to, the whole essence of Buddhism is that suffering is a part of life. And I don't say that in a negative sense, but it's like no matter what sort of is apparent externally, everybody has their own journey and their own life. And we just have to live with our own integrity, our own truth, to really know that that's what's for us. Yeah.
Yes, 100% agree.
So I have some yin and yang questions for you. So tell me, what rocks your boat? Are you a savory or a sweet girl?
Savory, I think. Yep, savory.
Savory. Summer or winter?
I think winter. Yeah. I'm excited about it getting colder so I can wear my coats and my scarves.
Oh my God.
Maybe that's just
that is so
being
cool.
A Southland girl. Maybe you don't have a choice. I don't know.
No, well, I'm such a summer girl, but I do know what you mean about this certain pull to winter clothing that sometimes feels quite, yeah. Morning or night?
Night.
I guess, do you feel like as a musician, that's when you come, as an artist, that's when you come alive? That's when...
I think so, yeah. I've tried many a time in my life to be a morning person, and it doesn't seem to have stuck yet. But yeah, when you think about it, that's when you play gigs and often when you write songs. So that's probably why I like it.
Yeah, cool. Yeah. So if you were to have a little bit of downtime, would you go to grab a book, a novel, a magazine, or would you watch a movie?
Can be both. I feel less distracted and more like I can really be part of the world when I'm reading books, but I would say that I watch more movies than read books.
Introverted, extroverted?
Extroverted.
Yeah,
maybe somewhere in the middle, but I think extroverted at the end of the day, more leaning towards extroverted, because if I don't see people, I get sad.
And just to close, Jenny, is there a quote or a lyric from a song or a piece of wisdom that you would really just like to leave our listeners with in terms of, shining their light and living a thriving life?
I will quote my own lyric from Lucy, just because that's what we're talking about. And the song finishes with the line, "Life confused us both." And I think what we're just talking about, that, you know, everybody has things that bad things they experience, or they have things that they compare to others and whatnot. And yeah, I'm learning more and more every day that nobody really knows, you know, the answers and so on. So I find comfort in thinking that everyone's a bit confused, but that's okay.
And isn't there something, I don't know, I think it's kind of cool that there's an element of life that is just perpetually mysterious, really. You know?
Yeah, it'd be a bit boring otherwise.
Like, imagine if we just had it all totally figured out. It would be really a bit naff, you know? So the whole sense of an element of mystery or intrigue is, you know, keeps life interesting.
I think so too.
Yeah. Jenny, thank you so much for your time and your energy and your goodness, for your creativity that you put out into the world. Thank you very much to the Shine Your Light Conversations listeners. Go out and shine your own light and thrive. Thank you.